This is Keith O, and welcome back. Today's tutorial, we're going to be creating this bar chart here using Python within Excel. In order for you to have this functionality, you would have to have the Excel 365 subscription. And they're currently rolling it out as of now. It's been out for over a year, but I just got access to it this year, which is 2025. But anyways, this is what we're going to be creating. And we're going to learn how to create a dynamic title. As you see up here, this will be dynamically created based upon the values that we select in a drop-down list. And then we're going to add data labels to the bars. As you can see, there's counts above each bar. And we're going to also format those data labels. Now, raw data, they won't have the 1000 separator, so we're going to learn how to do that. We're going to format the y-axis, which is over here on the left. Basically, again, these are raw numbers. We're going to take, let's say, 250,000. We're going to change that to 250K. So we're going to learn how to do that. And then we're going to sort the data bars in descending order. So as you can see, these are descending down by the number of clicks in our data set. And then we're going to also make the top performer, which is this one, we're going to make that a different color than the rest of the bars. And then as you can see on the left and bottom, we have borders on here, but we're going to remove the top border and the right border here. And then we're going to learn how to format the borders that we do want to display by choosing a color of our choice. So let's go over to our data tab. And this is our data, roughly about 1,000 rows in our data set. And it's just basically running ads basically on whatever channel that we want, either through LinkedIn, Facebook, email, etc. And we're going to get we're going to count the number of clicks that we got and the number of impressions and conversions that we got in the budget. Today's tutorial, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be focusing on these three columns here. And what we want to return in our chart is the number of clicks based upon either region, channel, or campaign name. And so this is how it's going to work. We're going to create a drop-down list of those three columns, and as we click on a different type of filter, watch what happens to the chart. It automatically updates. It creates the different bars for each type that falls within, in this particular case, the channel column. So you could see the different number of columns. Now let's say we want to get the number of clicks by region. We click on region, and as you can see, this updates. So for number of unique regions in this column, it's going to create a bar for it. And within each bar, it's going to give us the number of clicks that happen for that particular region. Now, this total number here is actually the total number of clicks through our entire data set. So if we sum this value up here, Control-Shift-Down arrow, Control backspace, you could see that down in the bottom right here, in Excel's status, it says 1,976,173. So that matches with that. And like I said before, as we select our filter, it automatically updates our title here. So now let's go into the actual tutorial and let's set this all up and see how this all works for us. Okay, let's go over to our new tab, and I set up things already, but we're going to take this step by step. So first of all, we need to create the data frame. So in order to do that, well, first let's go up to formulas, And let's go over to initialization. I just want to explain something here. Excel comes preloaded with certain libraries, certain modules that come in with Python. But in order to do our particular example here, we need to import another library, and you'll see in a second where we do that. So let's close out of here. Let's create the data frame. So enter in Python mode equal py, tab into that. Now I'm going to call this data frame 2 so it doesn't get confused with the other data frame that I already have. So I'm going to say equal, and then I'm going to select our data set, including the headers, Control Shift down arrow, right arrow, backspace. Now Control Enter. That commits your Python code and it creates a data frame. So let's click in that, and as you can see here, it just basically grabbed all this data that we selected, including the headers, and created a data frame for us. So that's that. Now what we want to do is we want to create a drop-down list of the filtering that we want to do for our chart. So in order to do that, very simple, is we're going to press Alt A V V, and it brings up the data validation. We want to create a list, and we want to select where we're going to get the values for that list. So I'm just going to do this here. That's okay. Now we have our list names that we want. So let's start out with that. So now before we get into, while we could do this, length of our data frame, and you'll see why we will need this later on. So I'm just going to press equal py, and I'm going to access our data frame 2, Control Enter. Oh wait, what I want to do is I want to use the length method, len, tab into that, Control Enter. Now it brings back 1,000. Why does it bring back 1,000? Because it counts the number of rows in our data frame. And since we have our header here, if I control down arrow, we got 1,001 rows because it's including the header. But our length actually only includes the actual rows, not including the header. So that's why we get 1,000. You'll see why I wanted to do this later on. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of our creating the column chart. And what I want to do is I wanted to bring up the formulas. I want to bring up the editor so it's easier for you to see. Okay, and I want to add a new Python cell in M2, which is where I'm currently selected. So here, and I want to expand this window here. And let's just expand this area right here. So our first thing that we need to do is we need to import another library that we're going to use that doesn't automatically come with Python and Excel. And I'm going to do from matplotlib.ticker import func function formatter. So we'll need this later on and you'll see why. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to create a variable where it's going to capture the value that we select over here in our filter. So what I want to do is I want to create a variable, and I'll just name it filter underscore type 2, and that's going to equal to the value that we select over here. So all I do is just come over here, XL, tab into that, and then use the double quotes. And then I'm going to select J5. Okay, now I'm going to press enter. And now what I want to do is I want to create a variable that's going to hold the total number of clicks for the entire data set. In other words, I want to sum this entire column without any filtering. So I'm just going to type in clicks dash 2. It's going to equal to our data frame 2. And then I'm going to access the column called clicks. And let's see, I'm going to press dot sum. Okay. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to create our dynamic title that we want to display in our chart. So we're going to create a separate variable name called chart title 2. That's going to equal to F. We're going to be formatting a string is what we're using now. So that's why we type in F, and then total clicks by, and then in here we want to display whatever filter that we're doing, campaign name, channel, or region. So we're going to grab the value of this filter type 2 variable. So we do that by using a placeholder in curly brackets and type in filter, tab into that selects that, and now we're going to type in grand total, colon, and then we're going to extract the value of another variable called clicks that we just created. And then colon, comma, that ends at, and then press enter. So let's go back here and take a step back. What this is doing, we're using an F formatted string in Python, and we're going to pass it a string. It's going to be passed literally these words, total clicks by, and then at the time of execution, it's going to evaluate this variable, what is the variable of this, and place it in this location. We're going to do these are little strings right here. And then we're going to also pass in another variable called clicks2, which is the sum of the total number of clicks. And now what we want to do is, upon evaluation of this, what do we want to do with this value in this variable here? Well, in this case, we want to give it 1,000 separators. So let's say this value here at time of execution is 500,000 without any commas or decimals. So what we want to tell it to do is take 500,000 and put 1,000 separator in there, which is a comma. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to group and sort our data here. So let's create a new data frame underscore grouped 2 is going to equal to the data frame 2 that we created above, and we're going to use the group by, and then we're going to pass it what do we want to group by, meaning the columns that we want to group by, basically, which is the value that's over here. So it's going to be filter 2, okay, and then comma, and then as underscore index equal false. And in a second after we execute this code here, I'll show you why we set this as index equal false. Okay, we're going to close out of that. And then we're going to access the clicks column in our data frame, which is over here. Okay. And what we want to do with that column, we want to sum the values in it. And then after we do all this, we want to sort our values. So it's dot sort underscore values. We want to pass in the column name that we want to sort by. In this case, it's called clicks. And comma. And then how do we want to sort it? Ascending or descending? By default, ascending is basically true. We want to do it in descending order, so we pass in the parameter ascending equal FALSE, false. So right now I'm going to commit the changes. We'll come back to it because what I want to do is I want to show you what the group data frame looks like. So Control Enter. Give it a second to calculate. Okay, it created that. So let's scroll over here. Let's close out of this for a second. And as you can see, it created that. So let's now look at the group data frame. So because it was just created, so equal py, and then the data frame, oh wait, grouped, Control Enter, just a second. Okay, this is not defined, so that means I did a typo. So let's go back over here to our code and let's see what I called it. So data frame group 2. So let's do this. I'm going to copy it, escape out of that. Let's collapse this and let's go over here. Now Control Enter. And now Control Shift Alt M extracts the value of that into Excel cells. And so now this is our grouped data frame. Again, we selected the campaign name. Okay. So we want to group the number of clicks by the campaign name. So now we have an index column and then we have two columns here. Now let's go back over here and I'm going to show you something. Python editor. Okay, let's go into M. Let's scroll down. M2 right here. Let's expand this. So this is the why I did an as index equal false, because I wanted to take the index away from this data frame and I wanted to create two new columns called campaign name. In this particular case, this campaign name is going to change. So if I selected region, then this column will be called region. So we got two columns now, and by default a data frame is two or more columns. So when I do that, when I come over here, when I use sort values, I have to pass it the column name that we want to sort by because it has two columns. It doesn't know otherwise. So I have to specify clicks because that's the column I want to sort by. So this is how our data frame now looks. Now let's go on to the next step here. Now what I want to do is I want to create a variable that holds the values or the hex codes of the color of the bars that I want. Now remember over here, let's go over here. Remember over here, so what we want to do now is we want to create a variable that holds the different color values that we want for each individual bar that gets dynamically created through our selection of the filtering that we want. So what we want to do, and I'll show you how this is actually working. So colors 2 is going to equal to a list, and it's going to be pound 0 F 243E. It's one thing, and then we're going to add to this another value, okay, and I'll show you how this works in a second. Pound C5 D9 F1. Then we're going to multiply it by, okay, LE, the length of our group data frame, okay, that's that, -1, and you'll see why we do this -1. Okay, Control Enter. Okay, as you can see, this last line of code created a list. That's why we have a list over here. So let's go over here now. Let's go into this column and let's see the values of this. So I'm going to need to bring this down here. You'll see why in a second. Equal PY, tab into that. Okay, created a list. Now let's bring this other thing down here. Now let's go up here to the left of the formula bar, and I want to extract the values for that. So as you can see here, what it did was it created a new list holding these values here. Now, why do we have multiple colors here, or same colors for certain for the numbers here? Let's go back here. Let's get the length of our data frame, our group data frame now, equal PY, tab into that length. And then we're going to do data frame _2, Control Enter. Now we got 7 back. Okay, remember down here, this is our data frame here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We got 7 rows in this group data frame. So now let's go back up here. Now this represents, okay, as it dynamically creates our each data frame, each time we make a selection up here, it's going to create a different size data frame. The number of rows are going to be different. And what this represents here is our first value is going to be the top performer in our data frame, which is the first one, because of the fact that we sorted in descending order. after that, we want all bars then to equal the same color. So that's why we have all these the same color. And these, what this does here, first, it gets the length of our data frame, which is 7 rows, okay? But we want to subtract 1 because we don't want to include the top performer. We just want to include all the other bars that we don't want specifically highlighted in the top performer category. So that's why we have -1. So as it multiplies this value by, let's say, 6 in this case, it's just going to repeat this value. So that's what it did here. And then it adds to that our top performer, which is this one. So it creates a new list of 7 elements, as you can see here. Okay, so that's what that does, and you'll see how we use this in a second. Okay, now is the time that we create the bar plot itself. And we could do this by first using plot plt.figure. And what this does, it creates like a canvas and a plotting area. So fig size, and we're going to pass it to width and height in numbers, in inches basically. So that's all that this is doing, this line of code. It creates a canvas on your area that you're doing it, and then we're going to be plotting the chart on top of that canvas. Press enter, and now we're going to use a variable called ax equal to SNS. We're using the Seaborn library dot bar plot. Okay, and then we're going to pass it many different parameters. We're going to pass it the data parameter, and that's going to equal to our group data frame. Okay, what are the X value that we want out of this group data frame? So the X, remember, the X-axis is our horizontal line, and we want that to be equal to our filter, which is what we select up here. And then we want to pass it the y-axis value. What do we want the y-axis be equal to? And that's going to be our clicks column in our data frame. Then I'm going to pass it, comma, CI equals none, comma, and the palette that we're going to be using, the coloring of the bars, is going to be equal to our variable that we just created, which is our colors variable. Now I'm going to commit these changes, and then we'll close out this editor to see how the the excuse me, the plot looks. So let's close this out. Let's display this. Okay, as you can see, it created it, but let's display this over the cells. So we're going to right click on this, display plot over cells, and as you can see, it created our plot for us. So let's go over here. So we still have some work to do. As you can see, the y-axis is not formatted with the 1000 separator. We don't have the data labels and no dynamic title yet. But as you can see, by default, it creates a border all around the plot area. So we have our canvas, and then it puts the plot over that canvas. So we're going to be modifying this in a second. But as you can see here, if we select this, you could see this will change because now we selected by channel, as you can see that. And if we select by region, Give it a second. And now you see it's all by region down on the bottom. So now let's go back to our code. Let's go back to Formulas, Editor, and let's start formatting this a little bit. So this is cell M2, so we got to scroll down to where M2 is at. Okay, we want to expand this. Okay, and let's expand this further over. Okay, so we got the plot. Now press enter. Okay, now what we want to do is remove the top and right borders of it. And let's do this. We have to access AX. Okay, let's go back here. What this does, it creates an object for us, this bar plot, and places it in this variable called AX. So that's what that is. Dot spines. Spines in this case is referring to the borders around our plot. So that's what that is. So we're telling it now we want to change something with the top border. Okay. Dot set visible. And we're going to pass it false. So it's going to turn off that top border. Now let's copy this. Enter, Control V. Now we want it to tell it to do the same, but only for the right border. Okay, that's that. And now we want to customize the left and bottom borders. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this down here, and we're going to make some modifications. So now we want to access the left border here. And we're going to set the color to a certain color here. So we're going to use set underscore color, pass it the hex value in this case, pound, and this is going to be a gray color. Okay, we're going to do the same thing now for the bottom border. And we'll set the color. Okay, now let's commit these changes. Give it a second to calculate this. Okay. You could click down here also and see what it did. It got rid of the top border and the right border. And it's fairly hard to see, but it did change the left and bottom border to the color that we want, which is like a light gray. So let's collapse this. Okay. Now, what's our next step? What we want to do is we want to format the y-axis tick values in thousands. So if it displays, let's go over here to this image file, see what it's doing here. So what we want to do is we want to change this to 500K or 300K. That's what we're doing next. So let's do this. So now this is where this library up here comes into play. Okay, so we want to do formatter. And then this is equal to func function formatter. And we're going to pass it a lambda function x, comma, underscore. And I'll tell you what all this means in a second. Okay, and then we're going to pass a colon past that. And then we're going to use the format again, format, and then we're going to pass in integer. x divided by 1000. So that's that. And then colon, comma. Let's get out of there. And then we're going to pass in a k. Do that. And then let's press down arrow. And then use this object dot y-axis dot set underscore major formatter. Okay, let's commit these changes and you'll see in a second how this is all working. Created an image file down here. Let's expand this. So as you can see, now it changed the y-axis values from 500,000 to 500K. You may be able to see this a little bit better, this left border and right border. It is a light gray. So let's go back here and let's understand what's happening here. What we're doing is we're passing something in the function formatter class function, and we're passing in a lambda function basically. And what this X here represents is, let's go back over here. The X represents these tick marks. All these individual tick marks from 0K on the way up to 500K. So we have all these individual tick marks. So that's what the X represents. The comma underscore means there's another variable that goes into this lambda. But we're telling Python, well, we don't want to do anything with that parameter. We're just going to pass in an underscore telling Python to say, okay, let's ignore this second parameter. Okay, so that's that. Now this colon here is needed. So once we have the value here, it kind of loops through all these tick marks. And what we're telling it to do, once we have the value here, what do we want to do with that tick mark? So we want to format it in this type of format. So we're going to first of all take the X value, which say the first value was 500,000. We want to divide it by 1,000. 500 divided by 1,000 equals 500. So once it converts that and creates an integer out of it, because we have to have an integer in this case, after this colon, what do we want to do with that value? Well, we want to format it with 1,000 separator. That's why we have a comma here. And it defaults here because we have nothing after the comma. It defaults to 0 decimal places. So after it does all that, it takes 500. And then after that, we put a little string called K right after that. So that's how that works. We puts that into the formatter variable, and then we need to pass it to this function over here. So that's how that works. Okay, now let's go over here. Now what we want to do is we want to create the data labels that appear above the data bars. So let's go back over here. These are the data labels that we're trying to get. So we're trying to sum up all the different numbers for, in this case, this particular campaign, Cyber Monday, and we want to sum up the values, okay, for that particular campaign. So that's what we're trying to accomplish next. So let's go back over here. Okay, now let's do this. It's going to be a for loop for P in, and I'm going to explain this as we go through it. So give me a few seconds. Patches. Patches is going to be referring to the number of bars in our chart. Colon, AX patches. And now height, HE height, is going to be equal to key dot get height. What this is doing, it's getting the height of each individual bar, okay, and the height is based upon the clicks, because that's what's in our y-axis. We're determining the number of clicks per campaign in this case. So that's what it's getting. It's getting the height in terms of clicks. So if the number of clicks for that particular campaign or that region is equal to 500,000, that's what it's going to return in this value here. So press enter, and then I'm going to use an if statement. If height is greater than 0, okay, we're doing this because just in case, let's say a particular region didn't have any clicks in it, but it brought it back to the chart itself, we want to make sure that it has a value. If it has a value, we want to basically format the data label. If it doesn't have a value, we don't want to do that. So that's why we put this if statement in here. So ax.annotate, we're going to pass in a formatted string again, okay? And we're going to get the value of the height and convert it to an integer, okay? It's that. And what do we want to do with that number once we have it? It's why we have a colon after that, and we're going to use 1,000 separator. Then after that, let's put in the double quotes to close out that, comma, enter. And now this part here, p.getX, which is going to be the left border of each bar, okay? It's going to grab that wherever it is. Okay, we're going to add to that the bar, which is a P represents each bar, okay? Dot get width. Okay, we're going to get the width of that, and then we're going to divide that by 2, and then comma height. So that's that, comma, press enter. Again, what does this do here? It's getting the left border of each bar right here. We're going to add to that, wherever that left border is on the canvas, we're going to add that, the width of the bar, okay, and we're going to divide it by 2. And the reason is, you'll see why in a second, we want to be able to place the data label in the middle of the bar itself. And we'll go back here in a second once we create this image. And then what this height means, that we want to create it above the top of the bar. So that's what that is. So now we want to do the next parameter is HA, which is horizontal alignment, is going to be equal to, we're going to place the data label in the center, okay? So in the center, meaning left to right, comma, VA is vertical alignment, equal to the bottom, okay? And then we're gonna, let's see, pass in the font size. We can adjust the font size, 10, comma, and then the color of the font, we're just gonna choose black. So that's that. So now let's commit these changes. Created a file. So now, as you can see here, what it did here, created the label. So let's go back up here. So what it's doing is it puts the label in the middle of the width of this bar, and it puts it on the top. And it does that for each individual bar in our chart. Okay. So that's what I mean. So let's go back over here. So the vertical alignment, bottom. So in other words, vertical alignment. So it's going to put it at the bottom here of the area. And the horizontal alignment, again, refers, we passed it the value center. So it's going to put it from left to right. It puts it in the center of this bar. So that's how that is doing. Now let's create the dynamic title, which we created up here. Okay, we already created it. Now we just want to display it. So let's set the title, okay? And we do that by using plt.title and pass it the variable that we created above, chart underscore title2. Now press enter. Okay, now you see the dynamic title. So now let's close out of here. Let's go back over here. And now this basically chart is done. So let's go over here. Let's do it by channel. Watch the title change. So now it's channel because we selected channel up here. It created all the grouped clicks for each different type of channel that are found in this data set. And as you can see, it's formatted nicely. So I know this tutorial was long, but this is going to help you work with all the different libraries of creating charts that you need for your data analysis. And again, there was a lot into it, but I found it necessary to teach you all this using this transfers also to if you did it within an IDE, meaning I use Jupyter Notebooks, for example. This works the same there. So I just wanted to show you within Excel. Again, I want to thank you for your time today, for stopping by, viewing this tutorial. Again, I hope you found value in it, and if you did, please like and share this, and also please subscribe to this channel because this helps get this information out to more people that need it. Again, thank you for stopping by. You have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next video.